Good afternoon. This is the Doylestown Township Pension Advisory Committee. Welcome, everyone. Do we have any? I guess we have a couple of guests. We have Deb Reedy and Nate will be joining us shortly. So let's move on to approval of the prior meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Any comments? Edits? They look pretty good to me. So all in favor, raise your hand. All right. Well, any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Minutes approval. The minutes are approved. Moving on to old business real quick. Stephanie, I think with the IPS, do you now the Board of Supervisors have that now? I've lost track.
It's going back to them.
Okay.
The solicitor reviewed it. You reviewed those comments at your last meeting. Recommendations, I sent that back to the solicitor and I'm waiting for him to put it in a final format for the board.
Okay.
Reminded him we need it by Friday, kind of thing.
Okay.
So fingers crossed, he'll do his
Great.
part. Oh, let me let Nate back in a minute here.
Great. So, Deb, we thank you again for sending us that draft. So we've leveraged the material you sent us almost a year ago, actually.
Yep.
And maybe it's 9 months. So we've tweaked it a little bit, and our committee has reviewed it. We went to the solicitor. He had some comments, came back to us.
Okay,
Now it's back with him, and then hopefully, relatively soon, the new one will be approved.
that's good. That's the investment policy statement, correct?
That's correct. Yep. Exactly.
And then once you sign that, you'll send me a copy of it.
That's exactly right.
That's perfect. That sounds good. So the good news on our side is it looks like one of the things we were having with Commonwealth, which is where that's where I was up until the end of December, we were not able to get certain reports done as time-weighted returns. They did it at internal rate of return. And so we were having some issues with that. And now under the new system that we're going to be under, they will have time-weighted returns, because I just pulled up the account as of last night's close and saw that this is just, it's actually both the accounts together. It shows the time-weighted return right now is up 1.86. Now, if we compare it against the MSCI ACWI one that I know there's two of them, we'll talk about those in a minute, but the one that you want is up 1.39 right now. So we can easily see those reports on there. That's, by the way, I'm sorry, that's as of 1/6, because that's when the numbers actually came over. So we'll have to go back and get it. They're going to have to do some work on getting it back to 1/1, because the account was at Commonwealth prior to that. This is from 1/6 until last night's close. But it's going to give us those numbers very easily, which is going to help us out on the reporting.
That's great.
So that should help. And we'll add that 10-year number in here. This report, we did do the 3 and 5. So one thing to keep in mind is that we didn't start up until the last 4 years. It wasn't until 2017 we started buying the ETFs. Prior to that, we had all the SEI actively managed funds. I had talked to the board pretty much for many years prior to that, but they finally voted on it back in 17. And that's when we actually made these changes over to the equity funds that you now have, which are ETFs.
Okay.
So that is one more thing to note on here. So I think we should just go right. Do you want to just go into the report now? I'm not going to read the report to you. I'm just going to highlight certain places, and you could stop me and we can go to any page you want to go to. I want to first answer all your questions because they were great questions. So Nate, do we want to go with that first, where we go in there? Because we wanted to first give them the page. I think it went into where we were showing the 1, 3, and 5 year numbers. We wanted to now show them the number that goes for the so this is the 1 year number, as you can see, up 1101.
Yep.
Now, and then we have the 3 year number would be next, which is 734, 752. And then he's got the 752 is the 3 year number.
Yep.
And then we're looking at the 5 year number at 884. And the 10 year number is coming at 7.34 is what we're looking at for your 10 year number on the on the accounts.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go to the next one, Nate, which is going to be this could actually, well, we should probably go back and answer the question here for page 13. Can we go back to page 13, Nate?
Yep.
So you had a question here and it was a very good. See at the very bottom, it says figures do not include a total of 449 grand.
Yep.
What happens, let me just explain what's happening with the accounts. You have accounts that are in ETFs and we've got, but our reporting for the pension retirees is going to be coming out of SEI. So they do that reporting at no charge. So we have to keep a certain amount, we have to keep some money over there for them to make all those distributions that go out to the payments to the pensioners. As you know, from the uniform plan, it was almost 596 grand that went out last year. So we move money back and forth between the two accounts. But to make sure that your auditors and you would also clearly see that money going from one account goes to the other account. So there's an accounting both ways. We don't put it in and out of these totals on page 13. We put it at the bottom of 449. But how you reconcile it when you go back to page 9, because that's where the question came in on page 9, you're saying, well, wait a minute, how's come you're showing only contributions of 1 million? When you're showing contributions of 1,297,000, yet on our page on 13 only showed $798,500 coming in. It's because we add the 499,000 on page 13 to that 798. If you want to jump back to page, so we add to the 798, the 499,000. We're going to come up with the same number that we just saw on page 9 as your contributions. Okay, the 1, 2.
All right, so let me just make sure I understand. Is that like a cash account? Is that what that Deb is, the 499?
Yeah, no, it's like, yeah, it's mostly cash going back and forth is what happens. It's money that goes back and forth between the two accounts over the course of the year. It doesn't all go at one time. We keep as much fully invested as we can. What is confusing is the withdrawal side, because the withdrawals on here, it shows that it was withdrawals, but they don't, but what also is a withdrawal is your management fees, the $61,003.32. So you have to add those two numbers together to get that withdrawal amount. So your withdrawal amount is total of 1,167,615 when you add 1. Nate, if you can unhighlight the contribution one, please.
Sorry. Messed that up.
Yep. And then it's these two, it's these two numbers.
Got it.
Those two numbers, it's the withdrawals and the management fees that make up your withdrawals, which those total out to 1,167,616. Now, if you go back to page 13, Nate, you'll see that we add to 668, the 449,000. It's going to come back to the 1,167. I just totaled out there a minute ago.
Got it.
Yeah, sorry about the confusion. It's because we can't keep it in one account because, like I said, the checks are going out and reporting is going out of the SEI account. And it's going to look the same.
Excuse me, but I thought the issue with this report, which is one that we, the township asked for,
Yes,
is to simplify what actually was the input and output in the pension plan.
and that's what this one does. That's absolutely right. That's exactly what this one does right here. That's
So the actual payments to pensioners in
right.
the uniform pension plan
That's right.
was almost $600,000.
That's exactly right. This breaks out every part of it, as opposed to just having one big broad number that's on page 13, or excuse me, on page 9, that big broad number. They wanted those broken out, and that's what we're doing on this page.
Does that make
Okay.
sense, Joe?
So what we're seeing is a contribution input of 800,000 and a output of 675,000. So we're in the 85-90%
You're still
withdrawal
covering,
versus contribution range.
right? You're still covering your contributions. Were covering your withdrawals right at this minute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but the contributions, so the contributions is also, you'd have to add the 499, right, Deb?
No, the 499 is just cash between the two places. It's not, it's really just, it's going between the two accounts, but it's not part of what's coming in or going out. If you can just think about it, it's almost like you having two bank accounts. Like say you have a checking account and a savings account in your own personal accounts. It's just you putting money between the savings and checking, going back and forth. We're not doing savings and checking. We're taking money from the national account, going over to the SEI when we need money there. We take money back and forth as, and I can't remember where the checks go. I think I should have looked at where the checks go in. I can't remember if they go right to SEI or if they come right to the Fidelity. I think they go right to the SEI account if I'm not mistaken. So,
I think I got to say, if you go back to page 9 for
yeah,
a second,
Yeah.
so page 9, a footnote could be for contributions. They include the 4.9. No, it was I said contributions or withdrawals.
yeah, they both do. The contribution and withdrawals both included because for every time you take money out of one account, you put it in the other. So they offset each other. They literally offset each other. So that's why this report was confusing and that's how this is the report that comes out of the computers that we have to show according to the FINRA laws. But the thing is, we broke it out further so the township knew, where you guys know how much of that's from the employees, what's coming from the MMO, what's coming from anything else coming in and out.
Yeah. So make sure I got it. The contributions and withdrawals include the 499. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
So what we're seeing is only the Commonwealth activity, not the SEI activity in this report.
No, this brings them both together. It takes them both and they suck them both together. It's both reports. It's your SEI account and your Commonwealth. It's the
Okay.
national. It's
All
both accounts together.
Gotcha.
It would
Now
be even more confusing if we didn't bring them in together.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
But this is your raw report. The report that Nate's got up there right now is the report that I think is the most important one to when you're looking at how much is coming in and out of it. It really breaks it out clearly there. It is.
Okay.
There were no contributions from the state.
It's no. State others 0 in there because the MMO is coming from you guys. It doesn't show any state aid.
That's weird.
Ken, what would you say on that one?
I thought there were in the uniform. There were 2 points or approximately 8,000 8,000 plus or minus per employee. That was a state contribution, and 1 point for the non-uniform. I would assume would show up in the state/other line.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, can you speak to that? Because I believe that it's, or actually Ken would know, because I know Ken and Chanel work on this particular report together, don't you, Ken?
Yes. The state aid is blended with the MMOs.
Okay, the state aid is blended with the MMO is what it is. We can later break that out, but it's in there.
That was one of the reasons we had that line in there.
Yeah.
So the next report, if we can break the statement.
Yeah, no, we're not. Just so you know, we don't see that necessarily. It's going to come out of Ken's camp. We don't see those numbers.
Yeah.
But Ken's good at keeping record on that, so we will have it broken out.
Right.
And if you want, we can even adjust this one, Ken, if you want to go back and work on those numbers. But it's up to you. I put a question mark next to that.
Yeah, that'd be good. That way we have the audit trail.
I'm going back to the genesis of this report, which Colleen and I worked on, and the state/other specifically was the state aid. So that's why we had that line in there. So I think it's important that we show how much of the employer contribution is state specific as opposed to township specific.
No, I agree. The thing is, we don't have those numbers unless we get them from you guys. Okay, it'll have to come from Ken. But like I said, I'm sure Ken could pull that together pretty easily.
Should we expect, if we're looking at this in the future, should we expect there to be state aid every
Yes.
year?
There's times where there's not, but usually there is state aid. I've seen some townships where there's not.
Okay.
We have state aid every year.
Okay.
Okay?
That's good. All right. All right. So any other questions? Anybody else? Okay. So, just in terms of, what we'd like, the remainder of what we'd like to cover, if you can kind of, walk us through top level, tell us the important things that the township should know. And then the final thing is, as indicated in the email I sent you, is, we've made a lot of progress with the Board of Supervisors. Now we have a plan to gradually lower the discount rate. Your assistance in that was instrumental, and the guidance was very helpful. And
Thank
so
you.
if you can just sort of at the end, use your crystal ball and obviously everything else, and say, all right, what's the current thinking now? And this is assumption that we plan to revisit, like no more than an annual basis, but just as sort of a sanity check. So anyway, those are the two things we'd like
Okay.
you to cover. If anybody else have any other desires? Okay, that's it.
So let me go through a couple of key things. Can we go to page 21? I think that's an important one. We're going to go through a bunch of different items here. If you look at page 21, this is a report I put in that I haven't done before, and it's going to look better the next time. But you see that column, we see the IR. Okay, so here's what happened. The iShares, you own the iShares S&P 500. Okay, we start out the year with 1,326,000. Nate, can you point to that? Yep. And we purchase and sales, they netted out to -88. So there's money coming in and money going out all during the course of the year. We ended up the year with 1,665,000. And according to our reports that we can pull from Commonwealth, our internal rate of return was 34.43. The problem we have is there are reports that give us that, year to date, just like right now with where I am now, I can easily pull year to date based on a TWR return. I can't do that. I didn't have that luxury at Commonwealth. But what I did do here, just so you can kind of get an idea, is the S&P, the index itself, which is right underneath it, Nate. Yeah, the S&P index. You're highlighting everything. If you can just, the S&P index. So the iShares is put together by BlackRock. And just like Vanguard has a S&P 500 growth index, they put together this index and they're trying to mimic that S&P 500 growth. If you started out the year with 1,326,000 and never added money or took anything out, at the end of the year, you would have had a 33.47% return on the S&P 500 index. That's what you'd have seen happen. All right. So you had money coming in and out during the course of the year. Now, the indexes always give you a TWR. And Nate, you can explain that. It's because there is no money going in or out. They basically, even though there is in real life, they show returns like as if nothing came in or went out with money wise. It just shows how that index started the year, how it ended the year. And that's how they do it. And if there were dividends along it, they put that into the total return number of that, how the index did. What I'm trying to show you on this is how by you sending money in as you do and us taking advantage of different markets, like for instance, when the markets were down, we were adding more to value, for instance. And you could see out of the iShares value, how more went in there. We were taking some profits off the S&P 500 growth side, adding to the value side. And you can see that our variance is huge between what the index actually did versus what you guys did on your value fund. Do you see that? How you came in at 3.90% return? And Nate, your thing is resting on the 1.36. How the index itself came in at 1.36. Some of them are pretty wild variances. And you see in the S&P 500 mid-cap growth, how you came in at 29.33 and the index was like almost 23%. Huge differential. Big time on the value side because we were adding to the value side. As you can see, we're taking some from the growth and adding to the value. So we took advantage of the market being down on that and being off. So you had a much greater return because of that extra work that we did on that. You also see a huge run under the small cap value where we added 87 grand to that one. You see how that was only 14.12 and the index came in only at 2.53. So it did make a big difference for you, the what we could do on the stock side. Where we were hurt last year on our performance had to do with the bonds, because basically the bonds, what beat everything was the aggregate bond index. It came in at 7.51%. As you can look under the double line, you can see 7.51. Now, some of our managers beat their index because you could see across there like PIMCO, let's go down through each one of the bond ones, Nate. You can see the BlackRock the floating rate one. So we sold out the Fidelity Advisor floating rate. We bought the T. Rowe Price floating rate. And you can see how the floating rate index was up 3.12 is what we saw for that year. We're going to talk about some of these bond funds. You can't actually buy an iShare of a floating rate fund. That's why we couldn't even do it if we wanted to. But you can see the BlackRock, for instance, the strategic income really outperformed its benchmark indice by a very wide margin. We sold out to Templeton Global. That's why you're seeing a negative number there on that one. PIMCO Income, Dan Ivickson, who runs PIMCO Income Fund, beats the index almost every year, but last year he didn't. Year to date, he's beating it by a very wide margin, but you can see how he underperformed last year. And then you'll see things like the Lord Abbett, your short-term bonds. Lord Abbett didn't beat it, but the PIMCO low duration run by Ivickson actually way beat it. The index it's benched against. Gundeland, who's a very famous manager running the Double Line Total Return Fund, he underperformed his index last year also. But the other ones like PIMCO International Bond way outperformed its. Other ones did well. The MFS Emerging Market did very well. And then we moved you from the AB High Income to the Vanguard because just, once again, less risk on that one. So it was our bonds that hurt us last year. Interesting enough, what we're seeing happening, and this is what the concern right now is what's affecting the stock market, is the interest rates. Nate, if you could bring up that one where we broke out their bonds that they have, you know, that spreadsheet, the bond funds.
Yep, one sec.
So one of the big concerns happening in the bond market right now is we've seen literally the 10-year Treasury move up about 0.5% this year. And from about a year ago, it's moved up almost 1 full percentage point. The concern is that there's inflation and it's really affecting the aggregate bond index, as you're going to see in a minute. So why I've had you in these bond managers all along is because rates have been very low since 2008. And usually when the markets start to recover, the Fed raises rates. This past cycle, they didn't do that because they were concerned about the housing market. Because remember, the housing market got killed back in 2007 and 2008. Now the housing market is going crazy right now in general, but the Feds haven't started to raise rates yet. And it sounds like they're going to wait because of the COVID, they want to make sure these restaurants come back, the businesses come back and all that. But you can see right now how your managers that have the ability to hedge against rising rates have made a big difference here. See, the aggregate bond index is now year to date down 2.93%. All right. And then you look at your other funds that you own, even they're positive, except PIMCO Income Fund is negative 0.34, but that's way outperforming a negative 2.93, as you could see. Double Line, which is Gundeland, he has a lot of treasuries in his portfolio, and treasuries are getting hurt more than other parts of the bond market. You can see he's still only down 105 versus 2.93 for negative on the bond side. So we're in a good place with rising rates. If you can look at the next page, which will look at the bonds that you have that are international, you can see how your PIMCO, how the U.S. He's showing the ag. So the PIMCO International Bond would be benchmarked against number 4 on here, negative 4.57. So you don't have the index of it. You've got PIMCO International Bond that's hedging the US dollar. He's only down 1.17. The actual index is down 4.57. And then you can see on the, I'm sorry, I apologize, the Barclays Global, he's 3.58. I apologize. So PIMCO International Bond is outperforming its index by about 2.3%, something like that. MFS Emerging Market Debt is doing better than its index by about 1.25%, as you can see on there. So those managers are doing things by actively trading those bonds to take advantage of what they're seeing in this current market condition that we're in. So a concern I have is if we continue in rising rates, that can affect the stock market. The bigger concern I have out there is increase in taxes and how that could affect, suspending what people have in spending on that. Nate, I would like to jump to a couple things back on the bond side. Can we go into the reports you have on the bonds? And I just want to go to just a couple of the reports that I want to show you. The Morningstar reports, Nate, is what I'm looking at.
Hey, Deb, while you're getting there, this is Colleen. I had a question on the active bond funds since we're, philosophically or can't buy indexes, right?
Yeah, Colleen, could
Are
you
you
speak up?
buying? I'm
I'm-
sorry,
I'm sorry, Colleen, I can barely hear you. Can you speak a little bit louder?
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I was just curious what share classes you're buying in the bond funds and if you're
Yeah,
looking
we're
at
buying-
CITs.
Yeah, we're buying the institutional share class when we buy the bond funds.
Okay, are you looking at collective investment trusts as an option for our plan?
Which one?
Any of the bond funds, are you looking at collective investment trusts as options for our plans? Because many of these managers offer CITs.
I haven't looked at that, but I will look at that.
That would be helpful, I think, just to keep fees lower.
Okay. I don't know. Are they all offered at a collective income trust that you know of?
Most of them are.
Okay,
Yeah,
I will look at that. Yeah, as long as they can actively do it, then I'm fine on there. I will definitely look at that. I'll make it a priority to do first thing tomorrow, as a matter
that
of
would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I had no idea. I've not even looked at collective income trust. Have they been out there very long or it doesn't really matter as long as the manager's running. If Ivickson's running it, it doesn't matter as long as he's doing the same thing he's doing the PIMCO income and the PIMCO low duration, for instance, as an example. So,
Yeah, most often it's the same manager,
okay,
same mandate. They may have different timeframes,
okay.
but you're stripping out any of the 12B1s or sub TAs, so it's just straight investment fee.
Yeah, no, you don't
So-
have any 12B1s on any of these because they are the
Yeah,
institutional classes already. But I'll make sure that it's the better that if we can find that, I'm going to definitely go for it. Thank you for telling me about that. I appreciate that.
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
So in the floating rate fund that you're seeing, there's not an ETF that we can buy that is an index of the floating rates. So just so you know that. I was going with the T. Rowe Price one because of the nature of the kind of what they look at for risk on there. Because remember, these bonds, if you go further up, maybe if you bring up your report up a little bit where you can show what's in the fund. These are going to be anything in floating rates are called bank loans. What bank loans have is mostly they're going to be double B paper or lower. So high yield bonds is generally what it's made up of. The difference between this and a high yield bond, though, is the fact that these are collateralized by the bank. So therefore, they're in line to get paid above even the regular bond holders for that matter. So they're just in a better space in safety wise from that area. But once again, the T. Rowe Price, I believe in that category is the best one. That's why I have you in this particular one. If we go back, let's go to the next one here. BlackRock Strategic, just go through them quickly, Nate. You'll see on Strategic, see under category index, the plus or minus. This tells you how it's beating. So if you go in the upper right-hand corner of the portfolio, you'll always see what the category index they benchmark it against. So this particular fund is being benched against the Bank of America. As you can see what they've got here for the index it's going to bench against. So you can see that it's beating its index by a wide margin. They're sitting in shorter term bonds. Does it show the duration down here, Nate? It should show it somewhere. Yeah, there's your duration. So it's on the short end of the stick for this. Let's look at the mortgage one next. Just go through a couple of the bond ones here. PIMCO mortgage is beating its index by a very wide margin, as you can see. Okay. PIMCO income, which has been it underperformed last year, but it's almost every year it's outperforming its index. You go across the very bottom category, across the U.S. category index across the bottom, Nate. Yeah, right across there. You can see how widely he's beat his index. Last year, he underperformed by 1.78. Actually, the year before he underperformed by 1.24. But years when he does underperform, like he did back in 2011, he well outperformed after that, as you saw on there. He's had a great number. What we saw in the Barclays Ag on the right-hand corner there is his 10,000 grew to 29,197 over that 11-year period, where the index grew to 16,450. We've overweighted you with him because I just think Iveson's a brilliant man. We go to the next one, the Lord Abbott low duration. So all your bond funds, I'm looking at ones that are outperforming their index here. As you can see, you can go to the low duration one next, which is run by Iverson. The next one, yeah, you can see how well it's done here. And then the double line is one that's been disappointing to me recently. That's run by Gundlin, who's pretty well known out there in the bond industry. He's outperforming his index by the 10-year number, but not by very much, as you can tell. He's got a lot in the government bond side on it. You can see he's got 65% in AAA paper. He's staying on the shorter side of the duration. He's beating his index right now. I've got him on my watch list. He's loved by Morningstar as a bronze, but nevertheless, he's the one that I've got on my watch list right now. If we go back to the next one, to PIMCO International Bond, it's outperforming its index there. MFS Emerging Market Debt. If we could show that, Nate, against the iShares, what we can do with the Emerging Market Bond. Okay. So I can
see if
kind
I
of,
can put them on the same screen. Hold on.
yeah, I'd love if we can put them on the same screen. It's hard. Because what we're seeing here is that the MFS Emerging Market Debt is beating the index itself, because the index itself underperforms its index, if you can believe that one, whatever that's about.
Can you see both on the screen?
No, they're
Okay,
on top of each other.
1 second.
I could, yeah, there you go. All right, so if we see the returns of the MFS, if you want to highlight the total return of it, there you go. Yeah, there you go. And here's versus this one over here is this the market value return, 520. So you can see the MFS is beating it across the board, you know, for the numbers, that across the board on the numbers. So I've kept you in this one over the emerging market bond index. Now the emerging market bond index, by the way, only charges 0.39%, because it's once again, it's just an index run by a computer program. Where MFS, they do a lot of work with the research team, they charge 0.84. But these performance numbers you see up here, the 10-year number of 5.65, all these numbers take out that expense. Whatever the cost is, that's net of all expenses on there. So you could see that you're still coming with 5.65 after all fees for the 10-year versus 5.220 for the JP Morgan one, for instance.
Yeah, but that, I'm sorry, it's Colleen again. You're looking at 12/31 on the MFS report and February 28th on the iShares. So I would maybe just.
Oh my God.
Sorry about
Wow,
that.
Nate, you missed that one up.
No, I mean, not Nate, not to throw you under the bus by any means.
No,
just
you
saying
are so right on. That's
I would
that is
see
a
what
total
they look
mistake.
like at the
No.
time.
Yeah, you are so right on. Yeah, I am so sorry about that. Yeah, I don't know what that's about. So, yeah, well, we're gonna have to pull those again.
Yeah.
But I've looked at them. I look at them like every quarter, so I know that where they stand. But anyways,
Yeah, I think in that category, you're gonna, do well actively in emerging markets debt,
Right.
but we'll see, right? If the
Right.
numbers come out that way.
it's the same thing on the high yields too. But
Right.
yeah, thank you, Colleen. Thank you. That's a major mistake here. We were throwing
Yeah.
that one together right at the end because I said I'd like to show that to them.
I have
Yeah.
a
No
question.
worries.
No, yeah, we're
How
all
much,
human.
how much of the total portfolio is this bond area worth? This
But your
specific
bonds are
one.
35. Your bonds are 35%. The ones we're talking
I
about
understand,
now.
but if we're talking about
Oh,
5% of 35%,
oh, it's a small amount.
it's not worth,
Yeah, these are smaller amounts of what you have, right? You only have 151 grand in the emerging
So-
market debt, and you only have in the high yield you got 436 grand. So you do have 587, but it makes up times 0.35, 5122. It makes up less than 10% of it, so it's not a huge amount of it. Yeah,
okay,
it's
so
not, it's a smaller
the-
position.
the margin of error over 2 months is nominal.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
but it's still important. And it was very important. What Colleen just said was very important, and I really feel bad about that.
I
but-
don't agree, but I'm trying to put it into perspective in
Yeah.
terms of how much valuation we're talking about.
Right. But I'm just saying that in general, most of your money's in all the other funds we just talked about, all the other managers we just talked about. Most of your money's with Ivickson, quite frankly. We've gotten PIMCO income 815 and low duration 683. So we've got a whole lot within his realm. That's almost 1.5 million, which is 5122. Yeah, so on the Ivickson's 815 plus 683. Yeah, 1.5 out of 22.
Deborah, we don't need an accounting.
Okay.
I'm just
Yeah,
making an
so about
observation.
30% is with Ivickson's team that's doing the work here. Okay, all right. So I want to go now, Nate, to a couple of key things on this report too. That, hold on a sec here. There were some other questions we had. Hold on. Oh, on the MSCI, ACW, IMI, those two reports.
the benchmarks.
Yes. So what Commonwealth, when we were doing those reports for you, they only had available on their system to bench against the IMIR-NR, which is what is here. On the new system we're with now, they use the NR one, which I just gave you the numbers on based on the NR one. The numbers are pretty much on top of each other. The differences are small. The IMI-NR one, their 10-year number is 8.89. The 10-year number for the NR one is 8.85. So it's off by about 0.030. So it's a very small differential, but there is a differential. And we can now use this one because our reports show this one every time. So it is a small differential on there.
So that's the last report we'll be using that one. That was all we had for the 2020 report.
Yeah, that's all we could use for the 2020 report.
But it's really close.
A couple other things that I was showing on here. We've done the thing on the snapshots with the portfolios too, to show what I do differently here. I was on the page 30. Do you want to pull that one up? Is that the one we're showing the MSCI? That's the IMI-NR one also, but which are going to be very similar to each other. But that's the one we were showing the comparison of what they've got with the allocation, how the makeup looks like. So the Doylestown, so what our breakout breaks out to be versus the MSCI difference there.
It's on the screen now. Is this what you're looking for, Deb?
Yeah. I don't know if that helps you out at all, but that was giving you a difference of where we're sitting on the left side with what you have in your mix versus what the MSCI is actually made up right now. So that's where we differ on there between the two. And you can see at the bottom what it would have looked like if we had these two, if we had the exact same allocation we now have in the Doylestown account and we take it back in time 10 years, it would have done better than the than the benchmark that we're against. But once again, there's money flowing in and out of this thing all the time. So that's going to, of course, make a difference on it too. But so that I was just trying to show you what the difference is about how we're doing it versus what's in that particular benchmark. Nate, what else do we talk about that we wanted to make sure that
one thing we still are is in the upper quadrant, 27 versus 32. So
Yep.
There's no change. There's no shift in quadrants there.
the main change is we have more in the small cap side, because what happens is some of the indexes that we're using, even though you have a large cap index, they're going to have some mid cap in there. Is what you tend to get is this bleed downward of what's in it. Correct, Nate? Can you explain that a little bit better than I'm explaining it?
Yeah, these boxes are derived by Morningstar, so sometimes they have a different definition of large cap than, say, S&P does. So this will, even if you had the S&P 500, for instance, it will have some money in this mid cap, according to the way Morningstar, which is
Breaks it out.
Yeah, that's the way they define it. So if you have mid cap, you'll end up with small cap as well. Same thing. We're picking up some more of those in those. Even in a mid cap, you might be getting some small cap stocks, for instance.
But the beauty of it, it does take out of the MSCI ACW index there. It takes out what is also in small and mid, using the same parameters as what was Morningstar's using on the holding that we have in Doylestown right
Right. So
now.
you're getting apples to apples at least on the comparison between them.
And Nate, I wanted to talk about where we talk about the actuarial assumption. Can you bring that up? Can you
Yep.
bring up the report? All right.
So this is a forward-looking, Deb? Is that what this is?
Yeah, this is the capital markets assumption. This is the one that goes to Jim Kennedy. So we do this for him. Let me tell you where we're getting it from. We're taking the capital market assumptions. We're using JP Morgan, who is very well respected in doing capital market assumptions on this. Nate, could you go back to the report underneath? I know it's very hard to read, but you can probably,
The large.
the large institution report that it comes off of.
Yeah.
Colleen, have you seen this report before? This JP Morgan report?
Yeah, we use JP
Not that,
Morgan
Nate. The
quite a
next
bit.
one, the one that gives the backup that we use to get the one that
Yep.
was Jim Kennedy.
1 second.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, the one thing about Jamie Dimon, who runs JP Morgan, he's really into these kind of numbers. So I love it. He's going to pull the report to show you the backup of where we're getting it from. Because what we sent to Jim Kennedy, and Nate is going to show you in a minute again. Go back to that in a minute here.
You see the screen now, Deb?
Yeah. So this is where the report's coming from. So what JP Morgan does is they take literally every asset class out there and they assign to it a certain number of what they anticipate, when they crunch their numbers. And this is in line with a lot of other reports by institutions. I just think this was done very well. But we take out of this, you can see on the large cap, Nate, if you want to highlight that, they're looking for a 3.31% return is what they're going for on the compound return of 2021. So,
This one looks like a slightly
This is out 10 years, Deb?
yeah. Well, they take out this report that shows it over. They use the 2021 and they take it out to take numbers out to further. Nate, could you bring up the very first report again? Because I was just trying to find that one. I thought I had a hard copy of it a minute ago.
1 second. I'm sorry. That was the full version we sent to Kennedy. So let's see. Sorry.
Yeah. Maybe if you just show the shortened version, because it's
Yep.
pretty intense. So the capital market assumption was 410 for large cap for the 10 years, what they look at. They basically look at an assumption going out 10 years on that. And then they minus out inflation. They're counting inflation at 2%. So that's where they're getting the number. The capital market, when you take the blended benchmark at 65.35, what's interesting is they're showing cash at 1.1 is what their capital market assumption is right now on cash. And their aggregate bonds is 2.1. Do you want to show that report we sent to Jim Kennedy again, Nate?
I'm sorry, Deb. The one we sent to Jim was actually that large report.
Okay.
So,
You go back to the first page that gives where we break it out. It's what we took off that large report.
okay.
So what we're taking off here is you can see that we've got 33.25% in large cap. The capital market assumption is 4.10. We've got 8% mid cap, 5.5 in small cap. Here's the capital market assumptions. They're expecting going forward right now, the foreign market's going to do better. Emerging markets are going to do better. They're coming off this number with what's happened in 2021, and then they make the assumptions based on that. And you can see that the gross blended return is only 3.9% is what we're looking at. That's why you're seeing a lot of these corporations, when they're looking at the capital market assumptions, taking it down so dramatically. If we go back to that report, Nate, that just had up a few minutes ago, that's the JP Morgan one, not the full report. No, not that. The other report that you just had up here, that one. If you get on the bottom right-hand corner, lower right-hand corner, you're going to see that you see how the S&P 500 companies, they were using their assumptions up as high as 9.25% back in 1992. And you can see how they've lowered them now down to using a capital assumption of only 6%. It's really about maybe 6 1/8 on there, 6 1/4. But you see how the townships or just the state and local governments were up as high as 8 1/4 back in 92, and how they lower them a lot slower. And you can see that the target, we're trying to target 6%, which I still think is a good target right now to go for. The S&P 500 companies have been more aggressive as lowering those assumptions because they just step up to the plate. They don't have as much in defined benefit plans as they used to have. They still have some grandfathered in plans, but they're not like state and local governments that have these, that's their pension plans, are these defined benefit plans. So for you guys to lower your assumption, as you know, every time you lower your interest rate on your assumption, you have to put money into the plan to offset that. So these S&P 500 companies have just gone out, and as they've made money or whatever, that some of them are bringing money back from overseas when they repatriated it back under the Trump administration. Some of them use that to pay down their, some of their debt that they had on these, or their liabilities on the pension side of it.
All right, so let me just ask, hold on, Joe. Let me just ask a dumb question here, just to make sure I understand it. All right, so what we're seeing in the pension return assumption, what is the allocation in that portfolio?
They don't say the allocation, but generally you're going to see them run close to balance. They might be 60-40, they might be 65-35. They're not going to be 100% equity. I can tell you that much right now.
Right, so my next question is this is the pension return assumption. So what this is basically saying for state and local governments right now in 2019, they're standing around
7-ish, 7.5.
7.4, maybe 7.5, 7.4.
Yeah, on an average. That's right.
On average, right. And then for S&P 500, they're down around 6. Is that what I'm reading there?
S&P 500 companies. So it's companies that are corporate accounts with corporate boards. Their corporate boards have lowered their assumption very aggressively, as you can see from this chart. Since 1990, since 2002, they've been aggressively lowering that assumption.
Right. And what would be your how would you explain the difference between one versus the other? Is one just more responsive? Is the S&P 500 more responsive to
the
market realities?
The S&P 500 company corporate boards, and Tom could probably talk to this too. You're generally going to have people in there that might be people that are in the investment business. You could have people on those boards that are, you can even have Warren Buffett's on those kind of boards that they're sitting there going, we don't want to keep this high assumption because you can't get there from here. So when they're sitting there going, with interest rates, if they're expecting the bond market to do 2% going forward, and you got to keep 30 to 40% in bonds to have it fiduciary responsible, how do you get there from here? And it's one thing if you could run at 100% equity, but you can't because you've got those every 2 years they're going to look at what your numbers look like. So yes, the corporate boards have been more aggressive in saying we got to bite the bullet and do this and put the money into the plan. Now keep in mind, most of those corporations have most of their pension money or their people's retirement accounts are in 401ks, where they do have defined benefits. Like for instance, Raytheon, which is I've got clients from Raytheon, they're retirees from Raytheon, but they have a defined benefit plan that's outrageously good. So Raytheon keeps the plan, but it's been shut down for years to any new people coming into it because all the new employees coming in after they shut down that plan have to go into 401k plans. So I'm trying to say to you that the S&P 500 companies, their boards, their corporate boards have said, let's get these pension plans, let's put the money in there. And in some cases, they've made them to cash balance plans where they put them off to insurance companies to just take the risk off of them, in some of the cases. But in the cases of state and local government, the problem is you guys have to raise taxes. You got to come up with the money to lower that from, that 8% actual assumption down to, 7.5 or 6 or whatever your number is. They do it slowly. The other townships I have, they've been doing it slowly. Like some of them are doing 0.5% every couple of years. Some are doing 0.25% every 2 years. But they're doing something to inch away at this thing.
Right, but certainly it's less expensive in the long run to do it quicker than slowly, right?
Well, no, you have to come up with a lot of money. So when Jim Kennedy, if he ran a number from you taking your plan down to a 6% assumption, the township would have to come up with a boatload of money, which how would they get that? They'd have to probably raise.
Right, but it's cheaper. It's cheaper in the long run because it's
you have money in there. Yes.
Yeah, it's like running a credit card balance, right? It's costly debt.
Yes. The other thing too is think about it's like if think about your own personal account. If you're trying to take care of yourself into a certain period of age and you've got so many years to let it go, because right now you've got more money coming in that's going out, but there'll be a point when this pension could have more money going out than money that's coming in. But the thing is, you've got more money working for you right up front that can do something to grow it. Right.
Exactly. So bottom line, Deb, is so based on everything you're seeing and your expertise, you're thinking 6% is still a reasonable assumption?
It's a reasonable assumption to target to. I would not recommend jumping it right from where you are now to 6 because I think that the people on the board would have a heart attack when they see the number coming from Jim Kennedy's camp. But I think to start to just say every 2 years we get that, because right now they're going to be looking at numbers of how you did last year and the year before, and they're going to be they're going to come out with your numbers. They're going to do, Jim Kennedy's probably in the midst of doing that right now. And he could run numbers and say, well, if you take it down 0.5%, what does it mean for the township? How much money?
We've done that. So basically, right now the township is planning on bringing it down 0.5% every other year. So on average, a 0.25% every year.
That's great. That's great. Joe has a question. He's got his hand up.
Yep. Go ahead, Joe.
Hi.
Joe, your hand is
my
bigger.
turn.
Your hand is bigger than your head, by the way.
I think this chart is telling in that PAC has recommended a target of 6%. The graph shows that where corporate America is going is at 6% and shows where the municipalities are lagging behind. So it's like stay the course. I think PAC has to reinsert. PAC has to support the fact that despite a good 2020, we need to hold the course and go to the 6%.
Gradual, over time.
Over time. Yes, I totally agree.
But I think if they can do that 0.5% every 2 years, you're just going to have a healthier plan. Because I mean, just you put it in perspective. Even if you were 70-30, even if using those numbers just to keep it simple here, if the market, most analysts out there are not looking for an 8%, not looking for a 10% return going forward, like we've seen historically coming on the back end, going backward, because they say we're just in such high debt. We've got people living longer. We've got more. We just got things to cover. I mean, as a country, people are going to get taxed more going in the future at some point when they just bite the bullet on that. And when people are taxed more, there's less money to be spent on the goods and services that make up the companies that make up these indices. So that means there could be some headwinds with tax increases. So that's the big thing. It's not just our country, it's around the world.
yeah.
Everybody's got the problem. And this COVID thing hasn't helped things. Look at the trillions of dollars we've gone into debt because of COVID, for that matter. So I'm just saying that it's just like yourself. If you ever ran your own plan and it said, oh, to get from here to where you want to get for retirement, you've got to put in so much every year. And then if you could put more in earlier in the game, you're going to be better off on the long haul, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. So
All right. So any other thoughts or comments, Deb?
Yeah, one comment. I think this is a nice graphic that if we were to put together a summary
Yeah.
for the Board of Supervisors, this would be a good indicator of what the future holds.
Yeah, I think you said, Ken Wallace, we have this, right? I think you just sent this out.
I can send this with Nick can send it right over to you right now.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We can shoot it right over to you. And you can see it. And this changes. I mean, the thing about JP Morgan, they put this up very, very, very often, but this is as of 12/31/20. So Nate can shoot this right over with the disclosure with it too, Nate. Okay.
Perfect.
But make sure the disclosure's with it.
Right. Any other questions for Deb? All right.
No,
All right. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you. I'm glad.
So
it's late.
what I do is I kind of plan the meal I'm going to have when I'm out. So you have your meal. You have your first meal planned.
My first meal plan, tomato soup, I think. I think
Tomato soup?
you got to go back into it pretty easily. I mean, it's like when you've not had solid for a little while. I don't know.
Right.
But I'm starving right now, so I'm not sure I'll make it through the night. So I'll be dreaming of food all night long, I'm guessing,
Right.
or
Yeah, yeah,
nightmaring it, whatever.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, I went over to Burrow Bagel and got an everything bagel and cream cheese. That's fine.
With everything. You have a stomach of iron. That's probably why. So, all right.
All right. Thanks again, Deb and Nate. Good
Thanks,
seeing you.
guys. Thank you so
We're
much.
everyone else stay on. We got a couple of things to go.
Okay,
Yeah.
take care. We'll go off.
Good job. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Colleen, for your comments.
All right. So, all right. So I have one other thing is I have been working on an executive summary report. So I wanted to show it to you real quickly. In the next couple of days, I'll send it out and look for feedback, but at least I wanted to walk you through what I've got so far. All right, can anybody see my desktop?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so this is a draft, but work in process. So the intention is the target audience for this is the Board of Supervisors, employees, and PAC, and anyone else who has an interest in the pension plan. It's intended to be easy to understand. That's basically it. So anyway, so I'm going to flip to the next page. All right, here it goes. All right, so this is a table of contents, a series of 6 metrics, the recommended discount rate, the 2021 budget and 5-year plan, and an appendix. All right, so the first metric is basically looking at how the investment performance has been versus the assumed discount rate. Up until, as we all know, up until relatively recently, the assumed discount rate was 8%. It's gone down to 7.75%, and we're targeting to get to 6%. So how has history looked? So up in the top here, this is a little old, but this is the time-weighted returns. And as you can see, 3 and 5 years, it's been, relatively good. You can see that's reflected in the graph right here. But over longer periods of time, it's not as good. So, for example, I calculate unfortunately, we don't have these time-weighted average returns over time. We only have them recently. So this right here is a simple average return, a 5-year simple average return starting in 2014. And as you can see, it's generally going up because the returns in the last 2 years. For the last 11 years, it's been similar to the number Deb had. It's been 7.12%. So anyway, long story short, the purpose of this slide is basically to contrast actual performance versus the assumed discount rate. All right, so moving on to, go ahead, Joe.
Ed, I do have an observation back from our time when Bob Salnick and myself and you had a little task force. There was a period of time where, although this represents what the return is, there were no contributions made for a period of time.
Right, yeah, I hear you, but this is strictly just looking at metrics. So
understand, but the metric can be misleading because we're asking the township to adhere to a 6% return when in fact there was a period of time where neither the employees nor the township contributed anything to it. So, you can put $1 in and it can be $1.50, but if you didn't contribute anything, the $1.50 could have been $3.
Well, that's right. And so what I have to think about how to capture that, but that's not the intention of this particular slide.
Understand
but
that.
that's a good
So
point.
I wouldn't want to put this up front as the first slide. Just an observation.
Yeah, so that's good. Well, we can talk a bit more about it next month. So
Okay, sure.
I do have other slides here, so let me go.
Okay.
All right, so that was for the uniform. This is for the non-uniform. It's basically same chart. All right, so this is a second view, a second metric, which is basically the pension investments versus the benchmark. And this is something we talked about for a long time. Tom has been very helpful in guiding us on that. So, and they just sent these. So this would be a comparison of how our actual returns are versus benchmark. And the purpose of this slide is primarily this metric is primarily to evaluate the investment advisor. All right, so everyone with me on that one? All right, so moving on to the next slide. All right, so this is the budget surplus deficit by year and funding percentage. Now, now this is what I'm calling this is a PAC estimate. So I'm going to go to the appendix real quick just to refresh everyone's memory.
Ed,
Yeah,
can
hold
I
on.
just go back?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go back to the second slide, I think, for a minute,
Sure.
where the investment advisor returns.
Yep.
I'm
This one
just
here?
concerned because we don't have the benchmarks for the other years.
Well, we do have it. We just got them.
In a good light on Deborah, and she could have, exceeded it for 10 years in a row and had one bad year.
Well, we actually no. We just got the benchmarks from her. She just sent them to us.
Are you going to do 5 years, 10 years also, or just 5?
Oh, I'm going to do whatever we can.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, the one thing that has changed is in the 2017-18 range, we went from a active equity investment to a passive index investment with lower fees. So
Well, that's true, but it's still in
trying to
general,
compare
Joe.
in my mind, let me speak.
Yeah.
In my mind, going back more than 5 years really is trying to match apples and oranges because the benchmarks were different.
Well, I would disagree with that. I think the benchmark is a pretty vanilla portfolio, and we're basically paying Deb in order to do better than vanilla, right?
Agreed.
So I mean, to be honest with you, this is really about constructing a report. We can, you know, we can certainly talk more about interpreting the report. This is more or less a format, if you will. So going forward, this is what the report would look like. Does that make sense?
Agreed.
Yeah, so this isn't about evaluating Deb over the last 10 years because, you know, we're you know, one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to be issuing an RFP and we're going to decide whether we want to stay with Deb or we want to move to somebody else. This is just strictly about coming up with a format for a report. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. So I'm gonna skip just to simply describe what I did on that slide. So you guys have seen that before. This is the blue bars are the deficit at the assumed discount rate, and then has a sensitivity in here. The sensitivity of 1% lowering the discount rate is this bar right here. So basically what I did is I went back to 2014 and basically more or less doubled those amounts in order to come up with this. Here's 8%. So if you double this bar right here, that'll have an approximation of what a 6% deficit would look like. Everyone with me on that one? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to go back to that slide here. So using that methodology, going back to 2014, this is what the deficit looks like, assuming a 6% discount rate. And I emphasize right up here, the chart and table are estimates. Hold on. Our estimate calculated by the packet, what the planned deficit and funding percentage would be using a 6% discount rate. These estimates are based upon the data we got from Kennedy, et cetera, et cetera. These should be considered order of magnitude and directional. It's not an exact calculation, but I personally think it's a good representation. So on the bottom down here is what the funding percentage is by year. And so the intention, at least my idea here, is to show what the trend has been. Any comments on this?
Yeah, Ed, yeah, one thing, I think it's realistic because I looked at the Kennedy reports, and if you look at the sensitivity page, there was about a $1 million differential between our current rate of 7.75 to 6.75 for the non-uniformed, and about 2 million for the police, which is
Right.
3 million, and that was at 1%. So 3 million at a differential between 7.75 and 6.75. And if you extrapolate that to 6%, you know, you're in the, you know, $5-6 million range.
Yeah, well, that's precisely how I calculate these numbers.
It-
So Ed, this is both pension plans
This
combined?
is both pension funds.
Okay, you may want to just note that somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
combined pension plan surplus deficit.
Good catch. All right, so moving on to the next slide. Based upon our discussion today, I think I'm going to change this. The intent, Bob had talked about this the last meeting, and I think I think the way to go is actually using this report here that we're talking about. So we'll look at the new improved version of this, which will break out the state funding.
Right.
So basically, I would replace the contents of this table here. I'd replace them with those. And so basically, it would make observations that, you know, as a couple of people mentioned, that basically here it was 86% of the township contributions were going towards retiree withdrawals. If we get the correct data in there, that the percentage will change. So so anyway, that's the intent of having that in here. We can add the appropriate commentary. Any thoughts on this one?
No, I think
That one only shows the that I assume that's the police at 12 million
Yeah,
now.
that's correct. Yeah, it's noted on the top there.
So we need to,
So the next page is non-uniform.
right,
So basically what I would do is I'd replace that slide with this one here, right? Now that we know what the difference is between the two. So anyway, that's basically what that's all about. And then, so those are those two metrics, if you will. And then here we have the recommendation would probably, the intention would be that, this is a report that we basically generate once a year. And so we can refresh this. This is basically our current recommendation and sensitivities. And then the last page here is the recommendation for the 2021 plan and 5-year plan. And then we have an appendix, and in the appendix Bob had suggested having some key attributes, description of what each of the plans benefits are. Here, for example, is the covered employees by year. And as you can see,
can you skew over to 2020? It's not shown.
it's not showing.
Wait a second. I'll move my,
Okay. Can you see it, Joe?
yeah, I just moved it. So, and the other observation is that the number of active participants continues to go down, and there's still the number of people that are going to be collecting,
It's going up,
especially in the non-uniform, which I believe was 20 last year active and is now 18.
Right.
So
That's why I wonder if you want to separate them out.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. Yep. We can certainly do that.
More, making sure that the non-uniform, had sufficient funding.
Yep. Well, I mean, it provides context. The sufficient funding is a whole other discussion. This is actually in the appendix and just additional information that we will track. And then, then this is just some other stuff that I just have as placeholders in there. Here's a calculation actually I use for the getting to the 6% deficit. So anyway, long story short, just to highlight. Go ahead, Joe.
Add back to that slide with the calculation.
Yeah.
I don't think for the board, they need to see that.
Well, this is the appendix. So we wouldn't
Oh,
go
okay.
over that.
All right.
So this is so just in summary, just to make a top level, just to walk you through it real quickly. And I'll send this out. And so between now and the next meeting, so this will be the topic of, we'll have a fuller conversation at the next meeting. But between now and then, I'll tweak it based upon the comments today, and we'll talk in depth about this next month. So anyway, just in summary, in terms of content, is 6 metrics: the discount rate recommendation, the PAC recommendation in terms of the budget, and then an appendix. A lot of stuff's in the appendix. Basically, the intention is 1 metric comparing investment returns versus the assumed discount rate. Those are those 2. 1 metric comparing the investment returns versus benchmark. 1 showing the deficit and funding percentage by year at a 6% discount rate. Another one showing the contributions and withdrawals. That's what these 2 will be. Those will be replaced. Then 1 showing the discount rate target, and then finally the recommendation, and then all the other stuff in backup is for anybody who cares to look at it, but we certainly wouldn't be going into any depth with the board of supervisors unless they asked.
I do have a comment.
Sure.
To Jennifer and Nancy, who are on board. Your comments. Are we in the right direction? What are we missing? What do you think we should add, etc.?
Well, I think that the one thing that I look at is when I see it, this is the perfect slide for it. It has a time weighted rate of return. And if I didn't sit in on your meetings, I might say, well, why aren't we looking at making our discount rate 7.5% instead of 6? Why are we giving ourselves that agita by decreasing it to 6%? So it might be helpful. I'm sure I have that question. I mean, I think I understand why, but I can predict that that might come up for some of the other supervisors. So maybe spelling it out why there's that difference.
Oh,
might be
sorry,
helpful.
can you say that again, Jen? I didn't quite follow that.
Okay, so what I see when I look at these slides is like this slide has time weighted rate of return at 7.5% for 3
Yep.
years. So I think if I hadn't been sitting in on meetings and being the liaison, I might not fully understand. I know I don't fully understand, and I do sit on, but why there's a difference between 7.5% and the 6% recommended discount rate. So it might be helpful for especially the rest of the board that doesn't have the benefit of sitting in on these meetings, to have some sort of an explanation why 6% is the recommendation instead of 7.5 or 8% like this chart shows.
Got it. So that's a good question. So basically, that's what the intention of this one here, the recommendation. This is the explanation for that. You know, it's based on what you're saying. We're going to need to goose that up a little bit. But basically, the difference is that, simply put, is the previous slide showed the. I'll go back to it. This is history, right? But the contributions are based upon what returns are going to be going forward. Returns going forward are actually going to be lower. So returns in the future, the next 10 years, are not going to be 8, 7%. They're going to be 6%. And that's what the discount rate has to be based on.
And the other thing is that,
does that make sense, Jen?
Yeah, it does make sense. I just think that it might be helpful to highlight that when we're talking, because you guys know that the most painful thing for this for a supervisor is the fact that we're going to have to put more money into the pension to make it. So that's our pain point right there. So it'd be good to be able to say, listen, 6% is an accurate, a good estimate.
What's missing from the previous slide at 7.47, that reflects a very Trump market, okay? As opposed, and prior to that, there was no contributions and a deficit that was built up. So despite the fact that you're earning 7.47%, you still have a gap for prior to those 3 years to pick up. No contributions by employees or the township, et cetera, et cetera. So and back when we were doing the task force, the average rate of return over a 15 or 20 year period was about 5.33 to 5.5% for the township. So again, it's all time weighted and maybe needs some explanation.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
No, you can't.
I think all of you are so deep into this and can explain it at such depth, but you have all this institutional knowledge. It would be a great general history, recap, recommendations, and then have the stuff behind it. But you put the recommendations at the end. I didn't, for me, as I always say, I'm not a numbers girl, but I'm learning and I ask a lot of questions. It would be helpful to sort of set up the scenario early on and then support the data. This is why things were, time weighted or things like that. And you can then see, contributions weren't made. These were unrealistic numbers, but putting that information up front, sorry, I'll stop talking with my hands, would be really helpful for us to understand, here's what the problem was, here's how we address it, here's our recommendations, and then here's the data points. And if someone is a stickler and understands it or has a question about it, but for me, I think the order is a little off. And I think telling the story up front, you all are coming with such deep institutional knowledge, and there's like these really important bullets. So I don't know if there's a way of doing that, just a really high level summary up front that does that. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but
Yeah, I get it. And that's a good idea. That's a good idea. We can,
but
we
no
can add that.
recommendation
We
at
can
the
add that
end
in.
is a lot, because we've already gone through a lot of charts.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and Ed, I would, I think for the, when you present this to the employees, which would be the police and the non-uniform,
Yeah.
those that have been contributing, I mean, I think it needs to say, yes, years ago they weren't, but when did they start? And I think everybody needs to be reminded, when did those contributions start? I think possibly the non-uniform started before the police did and things like that. So I think
Yep.
that's important, because they've been contributing now, 10 years, maybe 9, maybe
Right.
10, I don't know.
So knowing the audience, I think you're right.
Yeah, knowing the audience,
Yep.
exactly, Nancy.
Yep, thank you.
Because I think for the employees, there's a different approach. And obviously with the police, our plan is, I guess for lack of a better word, frozen. And so no new employees have been coming into the plan basically since 2010 or 11, we're the last people in it.
12.
And we have our 12ers that anybody hired after 12 isn't in the plan. So, but the police is still an open plan, and any new officers hired are in the plan. So, it's,
And nice to understand the consequences of continuing to leave that open, correct?
mhm.
I mean,
I think that's something they need to study in the future. I don't necessarily know they've gotten into that. I think they've probably focused more on the non-uniformed and the impacts and what that has.
I'm just stating the fact that it's still an open plan in police, nothing more, no study, other than just
Yeah.
showing that comparison and contrast. That's it.
Mhm.
Okay, so this we'll be doing a bit more depth next time around. So those are all good comments, and we'll try to get this to a spot where, so this is kind of evolving from the original intention was just to explain explain the current situation and the path going forward. It really wasn't intended to be, how did we get here? But we can certainly add in a section on how we got here, if that sounds like what people want.
And I think, Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, because employees are paying attention and think people are watching these videos,
Right.
that education piece that PAC has talked about,
Right.
it meets that particular goal.
Yeah. Well, just FYI, we must have given a half a dozen presentations on how we got here already over the last 4 years. So, but I guess we're going to have to continue to explain it.
Yeah, I
Right.
think I would agree that a big part of that is our audience. So like Nancy said, many of us know a lot of this off the top of our heads, and
Right.
Stephanie's right. People need to hear what they can absorb. So I understand this, but it took me a few minutes, to be quite honest. So I can't imagine putting this in front of an employee and them feeling better walking away from us, knowing that we're doing a good job, because truly the township is getting there, and our committee is certainly committed to that. I just want to make sure we can give a message that people, can understand. If
Oh,
that makes
sure.
sense.
And
Well,
Colleen,
that's
to build on that,
that's
I
certainly
get
what the
calls from
intention
the
of the.
pensioners too.
Yeah, that's certainly what the intention of the
worried.
executive summary is to simplify it. And so that's certainly what the
Yeah.
goal is.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing, the Board of Supervisors back in 18 or whatever, empowered the Ways and Means to put together a task force. So maybe there can be 3 segments to this thing, like how did we get here? Segment 1, where are we today? Segment 2, and where are we going? Segment 3. And I think, Ed, it's a great start. And maybe if we segment this thing into 3 sections, not meaning section 1, section 2, section 3, but more of a genesis, current status, and where we need to be. And there's not much tweaking that needs here. I think segment 1 needs a little bit of work, but I think we have the information to put that in. And then it can be done. And I think the Board of Supervisors, since Nancy and the other new members may need some enlightenment as to what went on back in history when they weren't on the board. That's my
Yep.
2 cents.
Okay. All right. So it's 6 o'clock. Again, we're going to be going more depth on this next month. So I'll tweak it some more, and then we'll do a deeper dive next month. And then I'll be sending this out. So please keep an eye out for an email and come prepared in the next meeting to get continue this discussion. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, that's it. I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A second.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi,
All right. See you next month.
excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.